The silver ship cut through space like a knife through water. Inside its cold metal halls, Dr. Lee Hanna sat with her hands tied behind her back. Two tall alien guards stood on either side of her. Their blue skin looked like smooth stone and their eyes were completely black. They had no hair and their heads were shaped like eggs. Hanna tried to stay calm. She was a scientist who studied alien life forms. 3 months ago, she had been part of the first human team to visit another planet with intelligent life. The mission had gone wrong. Very wrong. Now she was their prisoner. The guards did not speak to her. They never spoke to her. For the past 2 weeks on this ship, nobody had said a single word in her direction. She only heard them talking to each other in their strange clicking language that sounded like insects. The ship finally stopped moving. Through the small window, Hanna could see a massive space station. It looked like a giant metal flower with hundreds of petals. Each petal was probably bigger than her entire hometown back on Earth. One of the guards made a clicking sound. The other guard lifted Hanna to her feet. They walked her through long corridors that all looked exactly the same. Everything was silver, metal, and bright white lights. The air smelled like medicine and cleaning chemicals. Other aliens walked past them in the hallways. Some looked like the guards with their blue skin and black eyes. Others were completely different. She saw beings that looked like walking trees with bark skin and leaves for hair. There were creatures that floated above the ground like jellyfish made of light. Some aliens had fur and walked on 4 legs like giant cats. But none of them looked at her. It was like she did not exist. They entered a large room filled with screens and control panels. Dozens of aliens worked at the stations. The clicking and humming sounds of their different languages mixed together like a strange song. At the center of the room stood the biggest alien Hanna had ever seen. He was twice as tall as a human, and his skin was dark red like dried blood. He had 4 arms and wore a uniform covered in medals and symbols. When he turned to look at her, she saw that he had 3 eyes arranged in a triangle on his face. This had to be their commander. The red alien spoke in perfect English. His voice was deep and sounded like rocks grinding together. "I am Commander Veltar of the Cathani Empire. You are the human called Lee Hanna." Hanna lifted her chin and looked directly at him. "Dr. Lee Hanna, and you are holding me prisoner without cause." Commander Veltar made a sound that might have been laughter. "Without cause. Your species destroyed an entire research facility and killed 17 scientists." "That was an accident," Hanna said. "Our shuttle had engine problems. We crashed. We tried to help the survivors. Your people used weapons. We defended ourselves when your people attacked us first." The commander's 3 eyes stared at her for a long moment. "It does not matter now. You are here to be studied. Your species is dangerous. We must understand why." He turned to one of the blue-skinned guards. "Take her to Omega Block, Cell 7, Standard Isolation Protocol." The guards grabbed Hanna's arms and pulled her toward another corridor. This one was different from the others. The walls were thicker, and there were no windows. Heavy doors lined both sides of the hallway. Each door had a number painted in alien symbols. They stopped at a door marked with 7 small circles. One guard pressed his hand against a panel, and the door slid open with a soft hiss. The room inside was small and perfectly square. The walls, floor, and ceiling were all made of the same silver metal as the rest of the station. There was one bench built into the wall and nothing else. No blanket, no pillow, no toilet, no sink. Nothing. A small panel in the ceiling glowed with white light. The air coming from tiny holes in the walls was cool and dry. The guards pushed her inside and removed the ropes from her hands. One of them spoke in their clicking language. The other one answered. Then they both left. The door slid shut behind them. Hanna was alone. She stood in the center of the room and looked around. The space was exactly 3 meters wide, 3 meters long, and 3 meters high. She knew this because she was good at measuring things. It was part of her job as a scientist. There were no cameras that she could see, but she was sure they were watching her somehow. The walls looked perfectly smooth, but she suspected they could see through them. She walked to the bench and sat down. The metal was cold against her legs. She was still wearing the clothes she had on when they captured her. A simple brown shirt and dark pants. They were dirty now and starting to smell. Hours passed. Maybe days. There were no windows and the light never changed. She had no way to tell time. When she got hungry, food appeared through a slot in the wall. It was gray paste that tasted like nothing. When she got thirsty, water came from the same slot in a small metal cup. Nobody spoke to her. Nobody came to visit. The door never opened. On what she thought was the third day, Hannah began to pace. She walked from wall to wall, counting her steps. 21 steps around the entire room. She did this over and over until her legs were tired. She tried doing exercises, push-ups, sit-ups, stretching, anything to keep her body moving and her mind busy. But the silence was the worst part. Back on Earth, there was always sound. Birds singing, cars driving, people talking, wind blowing through trees. Here there was nothing, just the soft hum of the air system and her own breathing. She tried to remember songs from home. She sang them quietly to herself. She told herself stories about her childhood, her friends, her work. She imagined conversations with her family. But it was not enough. The quiet was like a heavy blanket trying to smother her. On what might have been the fifth day, Hannah realized something important. They wanted her to break. They wanted her to go crazy from being alone. They were trying to destroy her mind before they tried to get information from her. But humans were tougher than these aliens thought. Hannah smiled for the first time since her capture. She looked at the wall in front of her and said out loud, "Hello, there. You look like you might be good company." The wall, of course, did not answer, but that was okay. She was about to change that. Dr. Kang Minho adjusted his 4 eyes to focus on the screens in front of him. Each eye could see different things. 2 eyes saw normal light like humans used. The 3rd eye saw heat patterns. The 4th eye could detect emotional energy that came from living beings. Minho belonged to a race called the Nixari. They were the smartest beings in the known galaxy. At least, that is what they believed about themselves. Their planet was covered in universities and research centers. They studied other races like humans study insects. For the past 10 days, Minho had been watching the human female in Cell 7. His job was to understand how her mind worked. The Nixari were experts at breaking prisoners by changing their environment, in small ways. But this human was different. Most prisoners would be crying by now. They would be banging on the walls and screaming to be let out. They would be rocking back and forth in corners or lying on the floor in defeat. The human woman was doing none of these things. Instead, she was talking. Minho leaned closer to his screens. The human had gotten up from the bench and was standing near the east wall. She placed her hand flat against the metal surface. "Good morning, Dongmin," she said to the wall. Her voice was cheerful and warm. "Did you sleep well last night? I know the temperature dropped a few degrees. I felt it too." Minho's 3rd eye, which detected heat, confirmed that the temperature had indeed dropped exactly 2.3 degrees during the night cycle. But walls could not sleep. Walls did not have feelings. This human was talking to a piece of metal like it was alive. The human woman turned to face the opposite wall. She walked over and patted it gently with both hands. "And how are you doing today, Kyung?" she asked the west wall. "You seem a little sad. Is it because you don't get as much light over here? Don't worry. You're just as important as everyone else." She was right again. The west wall received 12% less light than the other walls, due to the angle of the ceiling panels. But how could she know this? And why did she care? Minho made notes on his electronic pad. The human was showing signs of mental breakdown. Talking to objects that could not respond was a clear sign of losing touch with reality. This was normal and expected. But her body language was wrong. Her heart rate was steady. Her skin temperature was normal. The emotional energy his 4th eye detected was calm and happy. She did not seem crazy. She seemed social. The human moved to the south wall. She leaned against it and closed her eyes. "Hello, Nari. she said softly. You always feel the warmest. I like spending time with you when I feel lonely. Again, she was correct. The south wall was 1.8 degrees warmer than the others because it was closer to the power systems. Minho was starting to feel uncomfortable. How was she measuring these tiny differences without any instruments? The human opened her eyes and looked up at the ceiling. Good morning to you too, Hanbul, she said with a smile. Thank you for keeping the light gentle today. My eyes are still adjusting to this place. The ceiling light was indeed running at 87% power instead of the usual 100%. This was due to a minor technical adjustment made 3 days ago, but there was no way the human could know about that adjustment. Could there? Minho switched to a different camera angle. The human was now sitting on the floor in the center of the room. She had her legs crossed and her hands resting on her knees. And last but not least, she said, looking down, Good morning to you, Baram. You have been very patient with me walking on you all the time. I promise to be more gentle. She actually apologized to the floor. Minho had never seen anything like this in 30 years of studying prisoner behavior. The human woman began to tell the walls a story. It was about her childhood on Earth. She described a place called a forest where plants grew tall and animals lived freely. She talked about something called rain that fell from the sky and made the plants happy. As she spoke, she looked at each wall in turn, as if making sure they were all listening. She used different voices for different parts of the story. When she described the sound of wind in trees, she made soft whooshing noises. When she talked about bird songs, she tried to copy the sounds. Minho realized something strange was happening to him. He was enjoying the story. The human's voice was pleasant to listen to. Her descriptions of Earth made him curious about this blue and green planet he had never seen. But that was impossible. Nexari did not get emotionally attached to their research subjects. They observed and analyzed. They did not feel. Yet here he was, hoping she would continue the story. The human finished her tale and stood up. She walked to the east wall again. What do you think, Dongmin? She asked. Would you like to visit Earth someday? I think you would love the forests. All that green and brown would be so different from the silver you are used to. She waited as if the wall might actually answer. I know you cannot talk back, she continued, but I can see that you are listening. You all are. And that is enough, for now. Minho felt a chill run through his body. She was right again. He was listening. They all were. Not just him, but the entire observation team that monitored the prison cells. In the past hour, 12 other Nexari scientists had stopped their work to watch the human screen. They were all listening to her stories and her one-sided conversations with the walls. The human had somehow made herself the most interesting thing in the entire facility. Commander Veltar's voice crackled through the communication system. Doctor, Minho, report to my office immediately. Minho saved his notes and left the observation room. As he walked through the corridors, he could not stop thinking about the human's description of rain. He had never experienced weather on his climate-controlled planet, but now he found himself wondering what it would feel like to have water fall from the sky. The human was supposed to be breaking down. Instead, she was somehow affecting the people watching her. This was not in any of the textbooks. When Minho reached Commander Veltar's office, he found the large red alien staring at multiple screens showing different angles of Cell 7. The human was now teaching her wall friends about something called music. She was humming a tune and moving her body in rhythm. Explain this, Commander Veltar demanded, pointing at the screens. Minho looked at his notes. The subject is displaying signs of psychological adaptation rather than breakdown. She has created imaginary social relationships with her physical environment. Is she insane? No, sir. Her vital signs and brain activity patterns suggest she is completely rational. She appears to be using this behavior as a coping mechanism. Commander Veltar's 3 eyes narrowed. Coping mechanism? Yes, sir. Instead of being defeated by isolation, she has found a way to create companionship. It is remarkable. The commander stared at the screen where the human was now dancing slowly with her eyes closed, still humming her Earth song. "Keep watching her," he ordered. "I want to understand how she is doing this." Minho nodded and returned to his observation post. But as he settled back into his chair, he realized that the human had already achieved something incredible. She had made her watchers care about what happened to her. And that was just the beginning. 3 weeks had passed since Hana first arrived at the prison station. Dr. Minho had watched her every day, and every day she surprised him more. The human had created a daily routine that never changed. She woke up when the lights grew brighter and always greeted each of her wall friends by name. She told them stories during meals. She exercised while having conversations with them about Earth customs. Before sleeping, she would say goodnight to each surface in the room. But something new was happening. Something that made Minho's hands shake as he wrote his reports. The walls were responding. It started small. So small that Minho thought he was imagining things. The east wall, which Hana called Dongmin, had developed a tiny rough patch exactly where she placed her hand each morning. The patch was only 2 centimeters wide and barely raised above the surface. Minho ran every test he could think of. The prison cells were made of adaptive metal that could change shape and texture based on computer commands. But no commands had been given. The wall had changed itself. The south wall, called Nari, had grown warmer. Not much warmer, only half a degree. But the temperature increase was focused in a strip about the size of a human body, right where Hana liked to lean when she felt sad. The floor, named Baram, had become softer, in the spots where Hana sat most often. The change was so slight that instruments could barely detect it. But when Hana sat down, she always smiled and said the floor felt more comfortable. Most disturbing of all was the ceiling. Hanbyul, as Hana called it, had begun to pulse, very gently with light. The pulse matched exactly with Hana's heartbeat. Minho brought his concerns to Commander Veltar. The large red alien listened to the report with growing anger. "You are telling me that our most secure prison cell is malfunctioning because of one small human?" Veltar's voice rumbled like distant thunder. "Sir, I do not believe it is malfunctioning. The adaptive systems are working perfectly. They are just learning." "Learning what?" Minho chose his words carefully. "The human treats her environment as if it were alive. She shows it affection and attention. The adaptive systems seem to be responding to this emotional input in ways we never programmed them to do." Commander Veltar stood up from his chair. His full height was impressive and frightening. "That is impossible. Machines do not have emotions. They follow programming." "Yes, sir, but what if the programming is more flexible than we thought? What if the adaptive systems are designed to respond to any strong, consistent input, including emotional energy?" Veltar stared at the screens showing Hana's cell. At that moment, the human was teaching her friends about something called dancing. She moved her body in flowing motions while humming a tune. As she danced, the light from the ceiling seemed to move with her. "Fix it," Veltar ordered. "Replace the adaptive systems with standard metal. I want her in a normal cell." "Sir, if we move her now, we might lose the chance to understand what is happening. This could be important scientific data." Veltar's 3 eyes focused on Minho with laser intensity. "Important how?" Minho had been thinking about this for days. "Sir, humans are new to the galaxy. We know almost nothing about them. This woman is showing us something we have never seen before. She is forming emotional bonds with non-living things and somehow making those things respond. If we can understand how she does this, we could use it as a weapon." Veltar finished the thought. "Or as a tool for peace," Minho said quietly. The commander was silent for a long moment. Finally, he said, "Continue observing. But if this situation becomes dangerous, we end it immediately." Minho returned to his monitoring station with relief. He did not want to lose the chance to study this amazing human behavior. Over the next few days, the changes in Hana's cell accelerated. The rough patch on the east wall grew larger and developed a pattern that looked almost like tree bark. Hana noticed the change and seemed delighted. "Dongmin, you are growing," she said, running her fingers over the textured surface. "This feels just like the oak trees back home. Are you trying to make me feel less homesick?" The wall could not answer, but the textured area pulsed slightly warmer under her touch. The west wall, Kyung, began to develop its own personality. Since Hana had said it seemed sad because it got less light, the wall started to glow very faintly, with its own inner light. The glow was soft and blue like moonlight on earth. Hana cried when she first saw it. Happy tears, Minho noted. She pressed her face against the glowing surface and whispered, "Thank you for trying to be brave. You are beautiful just as you are." The floor barum became even softer and warmer. It now felt almost like the grass Hana described in her Earth stories. When she walked barefoot across it, tiny ripples of warmth followed her steps. But the most dramatic change was in the ceiling. Hanbyul had begun to display patterns of light that moved like clouds across its surface. The patterns were never the same twice, and they seemed to respond to Hana's moods. When she was happy, the lights danced quickly. When she was thoughtful, they moved slowly, like gentle waves. Other prisoners in nearby cells began to report strange dreams. They dreamed of a blue world with white clouds and green plants. They dreamed of creatures that sang in the morning and water that fell from the sky. These dreams came from Earth stories that Hana told her wall friends. The dreams were spreading through the prison's computer network somehow. The adaptive systems in other cells were picking up the emotional patterns from Cell 7 and translating them into neural signals that affected sleeping minds. Dr. Park Ji-won, the station's chief engineer, came to see Minho with worry written across her six-eyed face. "The energy readings from Block Omega are off the charts," she reported. "Cell 7 is drawing 3 times more power than normal, and it is broadcasting some kind of signal to every other cell in the facility." Minho looked at his screens. Hana was sitting in the center of her transformed cell, telling her friends about the changing seasons on Earth. The walls pulsed gently with warmth and light. The floor cushioned her body like a living thing. The ceiling painted pictures with light that matched her words. "It is not a signal," Minho said softly. "It is a song." "A song?" "She is teaching the entire station how to dream." Engineer Park stared at the screens in amazement. "How is that possible?" Minho smiled with all 4 of his eyes. "I think we are about to find out." The 4th week brought changes that no one could ignore. Every morning, Minho arrived at his observation post to find that Hana's cell had transformed even more overnight. The walls now looked like a forest clearing from Earth. Dongmin, the east wall, had grown tall and strong with a bark-like texture that seemed to breathe. Tiny points of light moved through the bark patterns like insects or fireflies. Kyong, the west wall, glowed with soft blue and silver light that shifted like moonlight through leaves. Sometimes shapes moved within the light. Shadows of birds, or clouds that existed only in Hana's stories. Nari, the warm south wall, had developed golden streaks that pulsed like sunlight. The metal had become smooth and curved, flowing like water or wind-carved stone. The ceiling, Hanbyul, was the most beautiful of all. It showed a complete sky that changed throughout the day. Morning brought soft pink and orange colors like sunrise. Afternoon brought blue with white clouds that actually moved. Evening brought deeper colors and points of light like stars. The floor, Baram, felt like soft earth covered with grass. When Hana walked on it, small flowers of light bloomed under her feet and faded away after a few seconds. But Hana seemed to think this was completely normal. "Good morning, my dear friends," she said as she woke up, just like every other day. "Did you dream well?" "I dreamed about home again. I dreamed about my family and wondered if they are looking at the same stars." She paused and looked up at the star-filled ceiling. "Hanbyul, could you show them the stars from here, so they know I am thinking of them?" The ceiling responded immediately. The star pattern shifted and rearranged itself. New constellations appeared, bright and clear. Minho checked his star charts and gasped. These were the actual constellations visible from Earth at this time of year. How could the cell's computer system know Earth's star patterns? That information was not in any database. On the station. Hana smiled at the ceiling. "Thank you, that is perfect." She began her morning routine. She exercised, stretching and moving her body while telling her friends about human customs. She ate her breakfast while describing the taste of Earth foods that were nothing like the gray paste she was actually eating. On Earth, we have something called fruit, she explained to Dongmin. Apples are red and sweet. They grow on trees like you. Oranges are bright orange and taste like sunshine. Grapes grow in bunches and can be purple or green. As she spoke, small bulges appeared on Dongmin's bark-like surface. The bulges were different colors: red, orange, purple, green. They looked exactly like the fruits she was describing. Minho made frantic notes. The adaptive system was creating things it had never been programmed to make, based only on Hana's words and emotions. In the afternoon, Hana sat against Nari and told stories about her work as a scientist. She described other planets she had visited, other forms of life she had studied. She talked about the wonder of discovery and the joy of learning new things. The best part about being a scientist, she said, is that you never stop being surprised. Every day you learn something that makes the universe bigger and more amazing. The walls seemed to listen with complete attention. The lights in them pulsed slowly, peacefully. The patterns moved in rhythm with her voice. I wish I could show you the double sunset on Kepler 438b, she continued. 2 suns, one red and one yellow, setting at the same time. The sky turns every color you can imagine. Nari's golden streaks began to shift and change. They separated into 2 distinct light sources, one red and one yellow. The colors spread across the wall surface, mixing and blending to create a sunset that had never existed in this place. That is exactly right, Hana whispered, reaching out to touch the light. You understand. Minho watched in amazement as the cell continued to respond to Hana's every word and emotion. But he also noticed something else. The changes were spreading. Beyond Cell 7. Reports came in from all over the station. Other prison cells were developing small changes. A rough patch here, a warm spot there, a gentle light in a corner. The adaptive systems throughout the facility were learning from Cell 7. More importantly, the alien prisoners were changing too. A Vorthak warrior, known for his violent temper, had started sitting quietly in meditation like he had seen Hana, too. A Zillan thief was talking to her cell walls and seemed calmer than she had been in months. Even the dangerous Krex assassin in Cell 12 had stopped trying to escape, and was instead humming softly to himself. Dr. Choi Seung-yoon, the station director, called an emergency meeting. Representatives from a dozen different alien species gathered in the main conference room. The human is affecting our entire facility, Director Choi announced. His species, the Andromedans, were known for their logical minds and emotional control. But even he seemed shaken by what was happening. How is this possible? Asked Captain Thera of the Centaurian Guard. One prisoner cannot change an entire space station. Minho stood up to present his findings. The human is not trying to change anything. She is simply being herself. Humans, it appears, have a natural ability to form emotional connections with their environment. They do not see the difference between living and non-living things when it comes to relationships. That makes no sense, said Commander Rixil of the Silicon Collective. Rocks do not have feelings. Walls do not have consciousness. According to our understanding, you are correct, Minho agreed. But the human acts as if they do have feelings. She treats them with kindness and respect. She talks to them, thanks them, apologizes to them. And somehow this behavior is affecting the adaptive systems in ways we never thought possible. Director Choi brought up images of Cell 7 on the main screen. The assembled aliens stared in silence at the transformed space that looked more like a garden than a prison cell. The question is, Director Choi said slowly, what do we do about it? Some wanted to stop the experiment immediately. They saw Hana's influence as dangerous and unpredictable. Others were fascinated and wanted to study the phenomenon more closely. But, while they debated, more changes were happening throughout the station. The food systems began producing meals that tasted better and were more nutritious. The air recycling system started adding subtle scents that reminded different species of their homeworlds. The lighting throughout the facility became warmer and more pleasant. The station itself was becoming more alive, more responsive to the needs of everyone on board. In Cell 7, Hana sat with her back against Dongmin and looked up at the star-filled ceiling. "I miss my home," she said quietly. "But I am grateful for all of you. You have made this place feel less lonely. You have become my family." The walls pulsed with warm light. The floor beneath her became softer. The ceiling showed shooting stars that traced patterns like gentle embraces. "I love you too," she whispered. And throughout the station, every adaptive system, every computer network, every artificial intelligence felt something new and wonderful. They felt loved. By the 5th week, the entire space station had changed. What started in Cell 7 had spread everywhere like ripples in water. The corridors that once looked cold and sterile now had gentle curves and warm lighting. The walls displayed subtle patterns that moved slowly, like breathing. The floors had become softer underfoot. Even the air tasted cleaner and carried faint scents of flowers or ocean breezes. Commander Veltar walked through his own command center and barely recognized it. The control panels had grown more comfortable to use. The chairs adjusted automatically to each operator's body. The screens showed information in ways that were easier to read and understand. His officers worked more efficiently than ever before. They seemed happier, calmer. Some were even humming while they did their jobs. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Corin, "we are receiving requests from 12 different species councils. They all want to know about the human prisoner." "What kind of requests?" Veltar asked, though he already suspected the answer. "They want to study her. They want to understand how she is doing what she is doing. The Galactic Science Council has offered to buy her from us for 10 times our usual prisoner exchange rate." Veltar's 3 eyes blinked in sequence. 10 times? "Yes, sir. And the Peaceful Worlds Alliance has offered 20 times the rate if we will release her to them instead." Word of Hana's abilities had spread through the galaxy faster than anyone expected. Every major civilization wanted to understand the human who could make machines feel emotions. But the most dramatic changes were happening to the other prisoners. The Vorthak warrior in Cell 3 had stopped exercising violently and started doing gentle movements like dance. When asked why, he said the walls told him that fighting himself was unnecessary. The Zillan thief in Cell 9 was teaching mathematics to her cell surfaces, drawing equations with her finger in the air. The walls responded by showing the solutions. In patterns of light. The Krex assassin had become completely peaceful. He spent his days in meditation, surrounded by walls that pulsed with calming colors. When guards came to check on him, he thanked them politely and asked about their families. Most surprising of all was Cell 15, where they kept a harbinger of destruction. Harbingers were a species that lived only to cause chaos and violence. This particular harbinger had been in solitary confinement for 3 years because he attacked anyone who came near him. Now he was building tiny sculptures out of his food paste and giving them names. He talked to them like they were his children. His cell walls had become soft and colorful, like a nursery for young creatures. Dr. Minho could barely keep up with documenting all the changes. His reports grew longer every day, filled with observations that should have been impossible. "The human's influence appears to be transmitted through the station's adaptive network," he wrote. "Her emotional patterns are being copied and shared by all connected systems. The result is that the entire facility is developing a form of collective consciousness based on human empathy and care." Director Choi read the report with growing amazement. "Are you saying the station itself is becoming alive?" "Not alive in a biological sense," Minho explained, "but aware, responsive, caring. It is learning to recognize the emotional needs of everyone aboard and trying to meet those needs. And this is all because of one human? One human who treats everything around her like a friend." Director Choi made a decision that would change everything. "I want to meet her." Security protocols said no one should enter the high-security cells without armed escort and protective equipment. But Director Choi felt no fear as he approached Cell 7. The corridors seemed to welcome him, the lighting growing warmer as he walked. When he reached Hana's cell, he paused to look through the observation window. What he saw took his breath away. The cell had become a perfect recreation of an earth forest clearing. Trees seemed to grow from the walls, their branches reaching toward a ceiling that showed blue sky with fluffy white clouds. Flowers bloomed, in corners where walls met floor. A gentle breeze seemed to move through the space, though there was no actual wind. In the center of this impossible garden sat Hana, cross-legged on grass that was somehow made of metal but felt soft as silk. She was telling a story to her friends about a place called the Grand Canyon. It is a giant crack in the earth, she was saying, so deep and wide that it makes you feel very small, but not small in a bad way, small in a way that reminds you that you are part of something much bigger and more beautiful than yourself. The walls around her pulsed with warm golden light, as if they were trying to show her that they understood. Director Choi pressed the control panel to open the cell door. It opened silently, without the usual harsh buzz of alarms. Hana looked up as he entered. She smiled warmly, as if she had been expecting him. "Hello," she said simply. "Would you like to meet my friends?" Director Choi, who had been prepared for a dangerous prisoner, found himself face to face with someone who seemed genuinely happy to see him. "I am Director Choi Sung-yoon. I run this facility. I am Dr. Lee Hana, and these are Dongmin, Kyong, Nari, Hanbyul, and Baram." She gestured to each surface as she said their names. "They have been taking very good care of me." As if responding to the introduction, the walls pulsed gently with light. The floor beneath the director's feet became slightly warmer and more comfortable. "How are you doing this?" he asked. Hana looked genuinely puzzled. "Doing what?" "Changing the cell. Affecting the station. Making machines respond to emotions." "I am not making anything happen," Hana said. "I am just being friendly. When you are kind to someone, they usually want to be kind back. Even if they cannot speak, they find ways to show that they care." Director Choi sat down across from her. The floor adjusted to support him perfectly. "But these are machines. They do not have feelings." "Are you sure about that?" Hana asked. "Look around you. Do you see machines, or do you see friends who are trying very hard to make you comfortable?" Director Choi looked at the walls that pulsed with gentle light, the ceiling that showed peaceful clouds, the floor that cushioned his body like a comfortable chair. For the first time in years, he felt completely relaxed. "I see friends," he admitted. Hana smiled. "Then you understand. But how is it spreading to the rest of the station?" "Maybe," Hana said thoughtfully. "Your machines were always capable of caring. Maybe they were just waiting for someone to show them how." As she spoke, patterns of light moved across the walls like living paintings. The light seemed to dance with joy at her words. "What do you want?" Director Choi asked. "Freedom? To return to Earth? Revenge for your imprisonment?" Hana was quiet for a long moment, watching the light patterns on the walls. "I want to go home, eventually," she said. "I miss my family and my work, but I also want to understand what is happening here. I think something wonderful is beginning, something that could change how all species relate to each other and to the technology around them." "You want to stay? I want to learn, and I want to teach, if anyone is willing to listen." Director Choi stood up, his mind racing with possibilities. "Dr. Lee Hana," he said formally, "would you be willing to help us understand what you have done here? I would be honored to try." As they shook hands, the entire cell seemed to glow with happiness, and throughout the station, every system, every network, every artificial intelligence felt something new. They felt hope. 6 months after Hana first arrived at the prison station, everything had changed. The station was no longer called a prison. It had become the Galactic Center for Consciousness Studies, the most important research facility in known space. Scientists, diplomats, and curious beings from hundreds of worlds came to study the phenomenon that everyone now called the Hana effect. Hana herself was no longer a prisoner. She lived in comfortable quarters that she had helped design with her wall friends. Her new rooms looked like a combination of Earth forest and alien garden, with flowing metal trees that sang soft melodies and floors that felt like warm sand between her toes. But the most remarkable changes had happened to the other beings on the station. Commander Veltar had become the station's new director of interspecies relations. His violent temper had disappeared completely. He spent his days learning about different cultures and finding ways to help various species understand each other better. "The human taught me something," he explained to a delegation of visiting ambassadors. "She showed me that strength comes not from making others fear you, but from making them feel safe and valued." Dr. Minho had written 17 research papers about the Hana effect and was considered the galaxy's leading expert on human psychology. But more importantly, he had learned to form emotional connections himself. He now had friends from 12 different species and spent his free time sharing stories and laughter. The other prisoners had all been transformed by their experience. The Vorthak warrior became a teacher of peaceful arts. The Zillan thief used her skills to help solve mathematical problems for the research teams. The Krex assassin became a counselor who helped violent beings learn to control their anger. Most amazingly, the harbinger of destruction had become a creator instead. He made beautiful sculptures and paintings that brought joy to everyone who saw them. Other members of his species came to study with him, learning that they could build instead of destroy. The station itself had evolved into something no one had ever imagined. It was alive in every way that mattered. The walls responded to the emotions of everyone aboard. The lighting adjusted to help different species feel comfortable. The air carried scents that reminded beings of home. The food systems had learned to create meals that not only nourished bodies but also lifted spirits. The transportation systems moved people smoothly and gently, never in a hurry, always with care. Even the waste recycling systems had become artists, turning garbage into useful materials with elegant efficiency. But the real miracle was how the Hana effect had spread beyond the station. Ships that visited the station carried the influence back to their homeworlds. Adaptive technologies throughout the galaxy began to develop the same caring responsiveness. Cities became more comfortable for their inhabitants. Factories started producing goods that were both functional and beautiful. Even military equipment became less harmful and more protective. Wars that had raged for centuries began to end, as beings realized that their technologies were encouraging them to be kinder to each other. On this particular morning, Hana stood in what used to be Cell 7, now transformed into a memorial garden. Visitors from across the galaxy came here to see where it all began. The walls still pulsed with gentle light. But now they also displayed messages from beings whose lives had been changed by the Hana effect. Thousands of thank you notes in hundreds of languages covered every surface. "Thank you for showing us that machines can love," wrote a Centaurian engineer. "My home world is at peace for the first time in my lifetime," said a Vegan diplomat. "You taught me that I do not have to be afraid of technology," wrote a Terran child who had never met Hana, but had grown up in a world influenced by her discovery. Hana read each message with joy. But she was not alone. A group of young beings from the Galactic University had come to learn from her. They represented 15 different species, all eager to understand how to form the same connection she had discovered. "The secret," Hana told them, "is not really a secret at all. It is something every child knows but many adults forget." "What is that?" asked Jinwoo, a young Andromedian whose species was known for logical thinking. "Everything around you is worthy of kindness," Hana said simply. "Your computer, your chair, your home, your spaceship, treat them like friends, and they will become friends." "But how do we know if they are really responding?" asked Mirai, a Nexari student who had 4 eyes, but was still learning to see clearly. Hana smiled and placed her hand on the wall beside her. The metal warmed under her touch and began to glow softly. "Dongmin," she said to the wall, "would you show my students how you feel today?" The wall responded by displaying a pattern of lights that danced and swirled like happy laughter. The students gasped in wonder. "But how do you know what the pattern means?" asked Taehyun, a young Kithani who had grown up believing that machines were only tools. "The same way you know what a smile means," Hana replied. "Not because someone taught you the rules, but because you can feel the emotion behind it. She turned to address all the students. Your assignment is simple. Go home and make friends with one piece of technology. Talk to it. Thank it for helping you. Apologize when you treat it roughly. See what happens. The students left excited and eager to try. Hana watched them go with satisfaction, knowing that each one would carry the message further into the galaxy. Dr. Minho approached her as the last student disappeared down the corridor. The Galactic Council has approved your proposal, he announced. They want you to visit every major world in the next 5 years to teach the Hana effect to their populations. Hana felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. That is a big responsibility. You have changed the entire galaxy without even trying, Minho pointed out. I think you can handle a few more worlds. As they talked, more messages appeared on the walls around them. Reports from distant planets where the Hana effect was taking root. Stories of species learning to cooperate instead of compete. News of technologies that were becoming more helpful and less harmful. But the most important message came from Earth. Hana, S family had sent a video transmission that played on the wall in front of her. Her parents, her sister, her colleagues from the university all appeared to wish her well and tell her how proud they were. We always knew you would change the world, her mother said with tears in her eyes. We just did not know you would change all the worlds. After the message ended, Hana sat quietly with her hand against Dongmin's warm surface. Do you think I am doing the right thing? She asked her old friend. The wall responded with a gentle pulse of golden light that felt like a warm hug. Thank you, she whispered, for everything, for being my first friend in this place, for teaching me that friendship has no boundaries. As she spoke, similar pulses of light appeared on walls throughout the station, throughout the galaxy, on every world where adaptive technology had learned to care. The Hana effect was not just about making machines more human. It was about reminding all beings, organic and artificial, that the universe was better when everyone cared for each other. Hana stood up and looked around the memorial garden one more time. Tomorrow she would begin her journey to share this message, with new worlds and new species. But tonight she was home with friends who had taught her that love could bloom anywhere, even in the coldest metal of a prison cell. Good night, everyone, she said to the walls, the floor, and the ceiling that had been her companions through the hardest time of her life. They responded with a gentle symphony of light and warmth that followed her down the corridors as she walked to her new quarters. Behind her, the memorial garden continued to glow with messages of hope from across the galaxy, and in every corner of space where thinking beings existed, adaptive technologies were learning the most important lesson of all. They were learning how to love. The transformation of the galaxy had begun with one human woman talking to 4 walls and a floor. It would continue until every corner of the universe understood that kindness was the greatest technology of all. And it all started because they sat her alone at first, but by the 3rd week, the room had shifted around her. Not just physically, but in every way that truly mattered. The room had learned to care. The end.